when we complete the square, right? Now remember, our goal is always to solve a quadratic equation. Okay, so we have an equation, there's an equal sign. We have a quadratic equation, that means x is being squared somewhere. So we can solve using factoring, we can solve using the quadratic formula, we can solve using square roots. So this is our final method that we're gonna learn to solve. Now look, what I want you to see, and the reason that I have an example printed on your paper is I want you to see, look, when we get to this point right here, this is familiar. We already know what to do with this. So the goal of the previous few steps is to get right here, to get to this point. So how do we get there? Well, in order to have something squared, we have to have something that I can factor where the two numbers that multiply to this and add to this are the same, right? So in this case, 5 and 5 multiply to 25 and add to 10. So that makes this x plus 5 times x plus 5 when I factor it, which is x plus 5 squared. Okay, so my whole goal, when I saw this original equation, my goal was to get this right here so that I could factor it to this, and then I can do this next set of steps, which I'm already familiar with. Okay, so I want you to see, as we're going through the steps, that that is the goal. This right here is the goal. Okay, so the method is here, right? So first what I do is I move the constant. So the constant is the number without the variable. I move it to the right side of the equation, just using inverse operations. In this case, it's positive, I'm subtracting. If it's negative, I would add. Okay, so I move that. You can see that, 51 minus 12, 39, it's right here. But what I also did in that first step is I wrote plus blank on both sides of the equation. Now, the number that went in that blank was this number, the number that completes the square. This is the square right here. I need to complete it. How do I decide what this number is? Well, remember, I need my two numbers. I need two numbers that are the same. And those two numbers have to add to this number and multiply to this number. Well, if I need two numbers that are the same, that add to this number, right? What I need is to divide this number by 2. Right? Because if I have two numbers that are the same, like if it was 4 and 4, it wouldn't add to 10. If it was 6 and 6, it wouldn't add to 10. But 5 and 5, those add to 10. So I divide by 2, I got 5, right? So 5 plus 5 is 10, and then I'm going to square it to get this number because 5 times 5 has to multiply to this number. So that's the number that I'm adding to both sides. So I'm adding 25. Now notice, if I add 25 to this side, I have to add 25 to this side. So then I go ahead, I just do the math over here, right? 39 plus 25 is 64, and I factor on this side, and that's what gets me to this point where it's familiar to me. Okay, so I'm going to show you 2 examples, but I want you to see the purpose of the method. All right, here we go. First, add the constant to both sides, or right, I'm moving this constant to the right side of the equation using inverse operations. In this case, I have subtraction, I'm adding. So this equals 0, right? But I'm not going to write the 0, I never write the 0. But watch what I'm going to bring down, and when I bring this down, I'm writing plus blank on both sides. 5 plus 11 is 16 plus blank. I'm writing plus blank. Why? Because if I don't, then I'm going to have to write a whole extra step to add this number to both sides, so I'm just making my life easier. Okay, now, how do I decide? So that's step 1. Okay, I just did step 1. Now, step 2, add the number that completes the square on both sides. Now, the way to get this number is to take this number, divide by 2, which is -3, and square it. So -3 squared, that is +9. I'm going to add 9 on both sides. Notice I already have the plus sign. It's always going to be positive because when I square a number, it's always positive, so I'm adding 9. Okay. Now, the reason that this 9 is the number that I'm adding is right? I need 2 numbers that are the same that add to -6. What are those 2 numbers? That's -3 and -3, right? 3 and 3 is 6. In this case, it's -6. So this factor, right? Think about what this factors. This factors to x minus 3 times x minus 3, right? -3 plus -3 is -6, -3 times -3 is 9. I'm going to write it like this. X minus 3 squared equals, now I'm adding 16 plus 9, that's 25. Okay, now this should, you should look at this and be like, yes, easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? I know what to do with this. This is something squared, so I square root it. This is familiar. Okay, so I'm square rooting both sides. When I square root 25, I get plus or minus 5. Okay, and then this is where this breaks into 2 equations, right? Where x minus 3 could potentially equal -5, or x minus 3 could potentially equal +5. And then I'm just solving. So I get x equals -2, that's one of my answers. And x equals 8, that's another one of my answers. Okay, so that one's done. Let's look at this one. Notice here I have a 0 over here. It doesn't matter, totally irrelevant. I'm still taking this constant, moving it. Okay, this is 0. I'm writing x squared plus 18x. Right, now look, this is 0, so I could just write equals negative 50 here. Totally fine, that would be totally correct. But what I'm doing is I'm just planning ahead for my next step. I know I'm going to add something to both sides, so rather than making it a whole extra step, I'm just leaving myself space to do it right here. Okay, so now I need two numbers that add to 18 and multiply to this. Well, what are two numbers that are the same that add to 18? That's 9 and 9, right? So I already know. And in this case, look, here this was negative 6, so it had to be negative 3 and negative 3. Here it's positive 18, so it's going to be positive 9 and positive 9. But I'm going to take this number, I'm dividing by 2, that's 9. And I'm squaring it, that's 81. Right? This number is always going to be this number, divide by 2, and square it, right? The b in the quadratic equation, which is this one. Okay? So I divide by 2, square it, that's 81. If I add 81, look, what I'm doing right now is I'm adding 81 to the left side of the equation. Okay, I'm choosing to put the 81 there so that it'll look like this so I can factor it. Well, if I add 81 to one side, I have to add 81 to the other side. So then when I factor this, this is x plus 9 squared, right? This is x plus 9 times x plus 9 equals negative 50 plus 81, that's 31. I square root both sides. I get x plus 9 equals, I square root 31, I get a decimal. So I'm just going to write plus or minus the square root of 31. I still need x by itself. I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. And I write it like this. Negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 31. Looks like this. Okay, go ahead and try this one and then check it on the next slide to make sure you have it.